This is a quick installation video on how to install your new SpiritBro kit into your Spirit Life-Size Proton Pack that already has Frankengeek Electronics installed. The assumption here is that you have a Spirit Life-Size Proton Pack as shown above, and that you have the Frankengeek Electronics kit already installed and operational. As you can see here, we have a Frankengeek kit installed, and we are running it off of a 12-volt connection off of a Talent Cell 3000 battery, and that is probably the most common configuration and the recommended configuration for this kit. Additionally, what you'll want to have is the stock wand already removed and ready to go, and your new wand available, which should be a Hasbro 1984 or Spengler wand. Of course, these are not included, but the first thing you want to do is take the battery door and battery pack out, because you won't be using those anymore. You'll be powering this whole thing off of your pack. So let's go ahead and get started. As you can see, I've got a kit here, and this is basically the complete kit that most people end up ordering, and it includes a complete hose assembly with battery adapter and a little baggie full of the electronics, wiring, and mounting hardware. So let's first go ahead and open up the bag here, which is a static bag. So it's good just to be aware that these things are statically sensitive. Let's go ahead and just take everything out. And for the Frankengeek model, you should have a SpiritBro board that is in a little 3D printed assembly here that holds it in place, a pair of plastic screws, which will be used to hold this board into the factory locations, and then a pair of interface cables. And these basically just connect this board up to the Frankengeek board. They provide the SpiritBro board with the power it needs, and also the communication to and from the Frankengeek board. And then, of course, the final piece is your hose assembly, which is a 4-foot section of corrugated hose, and it has the battery eliminator adapter tray that slides into the wand, an end cap that screws onto the back of the wand to hold this in, and then inside this end cap, if you ordered the complete kit, you will have a little hidden function button here on the bottom. And what this allows you to do is to select different modes, and also retain a lot of the features that the Frankengeek board offers, because the Hasbro ones don't have 2 buttons like the factory Spirit ones do. So we kind of had to replicate that, and this is a good solution, and also provides us some additional things for the future. It has 2 simple wires that come out the end of it. One is a JST connector, and this is just for power. This plugs into the SpiritBro board and provides the wand with the power it needs to run, and then some wires have some bare or soldered end, and these are the function button wires, and those attach to a set of screw terminals. So additionally, what you will need to complete this installation of this kit is some screwdrivers. One would be some kind of like a small jeweler's flathead screwdriver for getting into these terminals, and then also a kind of like a small bit screwdriver that you can use that has something like a small star drive bit. Most of the screws that I use for these plastic thread screws have like the star drive style, or sometimes hex. So it just kind of depends on whatever comes with your kit. You might just need a few different things. All right, so first things first, like we said, you need to open up your pack and get into it. If you haven't done that before, well, then you haven't installed your Frankengeek kit, so you'll want to do that first. But the easy way is you basically just have to take the padding off the back of the pack, and then remove all the screws that retain it, and kind of carefully pull everything apart. The next step you want to do is remove the factory wand. And as you can see in this instance, we have the factory wand removed. So let's go ahead and just detail how we did that. And that is if you had the Frankengeek kit installed or the Spirit kit, you have a 4-pin connector here, and this you just simply unplug the Spirit wand, and then the Spirit wand secures with some screws and hot glue. You would unscrew these here, pop the hose out, and just pull the whole assembly out. You'll be using the same location to thread your new hose in. So let's go ahead and actually start with that, just because that is kind of necessary to run the wiring. So we'll take our wiring and fish it through the access hole here first. And this would also be a location you could use if you wanted to put a connector on here. You could actually attach a bulkhead connector here and put a connector on the end of this hose if you wanted to do that. We could detail that in a more advanced video later, but let's go ahead and just run these wires through. So we just kind of gently pull them in and then kind of get this hose up to the hole here. And then what we'll want to do is kind of pinch the hose a little bit, just to kind of, so as you can see, I'm kind of pinching this here and it kind of dents in. And this way I can collapse it just a tiny bit to get through here, because this hole is made for a slightly smaller hose, but this hose does fit with a little convincing. And then once you get it in there, you can just, you just can kind of smash this in to get it in. And then once you get this in here, you can kind of pull it, and you can pull through each rib. You hear kind of click as it slowly climbs through. And you can see that it just kind of works this back and forth until it comes in. And once you get this a few inches inside the pack, that's ideal, like that. So what you can do to secure this is this can fit over this stock post here. And one way you can do this is just make a small hole in the hose. And if you do that, you can use a hole puncher or a drill bit or anything you'd like, but just be very careful not to sever any of the wires. And once you do that, then you could slip this over here and just use the factory screw. Now you can retain these wires as well by running them up and running them right on top of these original posts and sticking them between these two posts just like this. And additionally, you can put a screw in there to kind of hold them over there, or some hot glue or whatever you feel like would work best in your situation. All right, now let's move on to the actual wiring and setup of this device. This is where it's kind of nice to have things loose. So we're going to take our SpiritBro board, and we're going to take our flat screwdriver and make sure that these little terminals on the bottom that are labeled switch on. This is our function button terminal. In newer versions of this board, it might actually just say function. So it just kind of, again, depends on what you have. Every revision of the boards have slight little changes just as we learn and go. But once those jaws are all the way open, then we can just carefully take our black wires and insert them carefully and slowly into the connector, like so. And it's a little tricky to do. And then once you get each connector or each wire run into it, you'll actually take the screwdriver and tighten that down, turning it clockwise. And then you give it a little bit of a tug just to make sure that it really did go in there. Because sometimes it's easy to miss the clamps on these things. It's always good to kind of support these terminals too while you're screwing them in, just in case. Don't make too much stress on the circuit board. So again, make sure it's good. And once it's all good, then we are in a good place. So you can either install the board like this now, or you can kind of preload it with things. So that's what I like to do. Just get everything kind of pre-wired. Let's take our wand connector, which is this 2-pin JST connector. It goes to this bottom connector labeled wand. And we will just simply insert it, push down until it snaps in. They're keyed, they can only go one direction. And then the next thing you also want to do is attach the 6-pin connector, just any end of it's fine. And that just goes into that 6-pin, just like that. And then the 4-pin connector on the top as well, just like that. All right, so now we have all of our wiring completed. Let's go ahead and mount this board. To mount this board, we will go ahead and mount this in the place where the factory screws that you had holding in the Frankengeek board were attached. So on the bottom here, there were 2 screws. I backed them out and removed them. And what we're going to do is replace them with these 2 longer 1/2-inch plastic screws that the kit includes. So the simple way you do this is take the SpiritBro circuit board holder and take these screws and just kind of try to pre-position them here so they're kind of in place. They might be a bit snug, and you might end up kind of spreading things through here a little bit. So don't worry if you kind of feel a little bit of resistance when you're going to start turning these. All right, so you go ahead and line these up and take your first screw and just kind of line it up with the board here. And you can see that kind of here underneath. And I'll just kind of back out so you can watch this here. And just be careful to kind of make sure that everything is lining up with the posts, and it just gently goes on here. And do not over tighten this. You do not want to crack or break your pack or your Frankengeek board. And so we'll just attach both. And now we can see that, give it a little wiggle here. Everything is nice and sturdy. And at this point, we're ready to do the final wiring. All right, so let's go ahead and wire this in. We've already got our wand attached, our function button, and we've already got these 2 connections pre-made. Simply all you have to do is connect these to the Frankengeek board. The 4-pin goes to the left side top here. And again, it's keyed, so you don't have to worry about breaking it. And let's go ahead and do the bottom piece here, which is the 6-pin connector. And that just goes in this bottom lower left. And I always brace the back of the board with one finger while I'm doing this to kind of just make sure that I'm not applying too much pressure and breaking anything. All right, that's it. Everything's wired up. So at this point, you can do cable management of your choice, which might be using some tape or some zip ties or hot glue or whatever you feel like. But let's go ahead and just start and make sure we just do a basic test, and we'll turn our talent cell on. And when we do that, what we should see are 2 different things going on here. The Frankengeek board's green indicator should light up, letting you know there's power. And then the SpiritBro's green indicator should flash slowly to let you know that it's powered up and it's waiting to find the wand. All right, that means things are working. So let's go ahead and turn our talent cell back off. And let's go ahead and install our wand battery eliminator. To do that, we just simply take our wand battery eliminator hose and our 84 Spengler wand, and we just insert this like so until it fits in all the way. Take the hose and just slowly and carefully line it up until the threads meet up, and then just twist it. And you can just twist everything until it's nice and snug. And you can see that the little function button should kind of line up fairly center with the post, depending on how things go. And it swivels a little bit because these hoses are designed so that they can still have some movement. All right, so now at this point, we would just go ahead and do a full power up test. Let's go ahead and turn our talent cell back on. And at this point, again, both green indicators are on. So let's make sure our wand connections, our wand switches are all in the off position. And let's go ahead and power up the wand. If you hear it powering up, that means things are working. And finally, we'll turn this on. And you'll hear that the Frankengeek board powers up with the Spirit Wand. And then the indicator goes to a fast blue flash. When you fire the wand, you'll see that it goes to a fast red flash. And the pack, the SpiritBro pack, will also play its firing sequence. And additionally, we can test the off feature by shutting it down. And the pack should shut down. And then we can use the function button on the bottom to trigger things like music mode. Hold this down for more than 1 second. You can see that indicator flashes. And then a few seconds later, the music starts. Press the button quickly to skip tracks, and long press it again to disable it. And you can do other functions with this, as like the manual venting. And you can also power on and off the Spirit Pack with a quick press. So if the pack and the wand are in different states because the wand went to sleep, you can correct that by just going a quick tap. You can see that powers things on here. In this case, the wand wasn't on, so I turned the pack on. I can also press it again really fast and shut the pack back off. Additionally, you can do things like I was saying, like if it's in the on state, you can use the function button and double tap it to do a manual vent. All right,